Hi, Sean. Welcome to Just Curious. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
Great. Maybe I can give a short introduction before we jump in. Sean is a leading AI business transformation strategist and the founder of Human Pilots AI, where he helps executives integrate AI effectively into their organizations. His expertise lies in aligning AI adoption with business strategy, ensuring companies maximize impact through measurable strategic pilots and long-term transformation. Sean is passionate about responsible AI adoption, focusing on leadership, trust building, and the human side of AI transformation. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about where to start with AI in an organization, how to find and measure value from AI investments, and how to scale AI effectively across large, complex companies. Sean, welcome.
Thank you.
Maybe before we jump in, you can share a little bit more about your background and how you got involved in helping organizations better understand and use AI.
Sure. Background in customer analytics, predictive marketing, and customer experience, working with global brands. The AI came to place about 10 years ago or so when I was at IBM working with their Watson system and then some of the other models that came after that. So this idea of the technology is being taken care of by the engineers, but how are we going to bring it out to people? The leaders, their employees, and then the customers. So that's been my burning obsession for a long time is what's the human impact and how do we do this the right way?
Awesome. We're going to walk through a bunch of thoughts and insights and lessons through an example. Maybe we can start by sharing a case where a customer came to you with a specific problem.
Sure. So uh, there's been a bunch, and I'll pick out one that was a retail payments customer. So they were about to launch a new product into the market. The market had become more crowded. Their early test had not trended positive, and so they needed some adjustments to launch their product. So it was a little bit of a product marketing problem to solve. Engaging with human pilots and myself, the challenge started, and this is where it typically starts, is we identify the business problem, but then we have to align the leadership. And so working with the C-suite, operations, financial, HR, legal, and then the CEO, we had to get crisp about what that vision for the future was with how AI would play in their company. What is that role so they could communicate it clearly to their employees that had to get on board with where things were going, and then also to their customers about how their data was going to be used and in what way do they need to communicate that. What we focused on initially was the marketing of the story of the positioning of how we were going to take this to market. It's interesting with these projects, as you start through a transformation, that you start to pull the string a little bit and you find some other things that come up. I mentioned the communication. How do you talk to the people in the business? How does that impact the culture? That's not the way things have been, so it's going to change. And how do you manage that change? The great healthy part about it is that in this case, and every case I've been a part of, is that the leaders having that conversation and leading that conversation with their teams has always been it's been so helpful to the employees. We do a lot of research with the employees and how their engagement and their experiences throughout the process of going through and transformation with the Human Pilots program. And they always have a spike up when the leaders come to talk to them and say, here's what we're going to do. We have a plan. Because more often than not, the employees are already using it in some capacity. It's not, are they or aren't they? It's, are they telling their boss, or how are they talking about it? But once you kind of get past that, then the leadership can say, okay, here's how we're going to use it. Here's what we're going to do with our data. Here's how we're going to protect our company and our customers' information. And then we can move forward. In the case I was talking about earlier with the payments retail group, we found out that they had a lot of data available about their customers that they hadn't really paid attention to, or they hadn't seen it through the opportunity zone that we presented. But after some analysis, we found that we could personalize some of the offerings, and it had tremendous impact. And so it resulted in internally the marketing and data teams were able to, we calculated before and after, 40% more productive and effective. The revenue lift was about 20% off the front end. And then the adoption was pretty strong coming out of the gate, much higher than it had been previously. So they were happy about that. The positioning was well received in the market, and we moved forward. But that was just an early use case. We wanted to do high impact and low risk. So we manage the risk appropriately throughout the process so that we're not, exposing the company or putting them in any situation they don't want to be in.
Interesting. And so if we take a step back, the customers, the marketing function within this payments company, is that who ultimately originally came to you?
Originally, it was the C-suite, the CEO and the
Let's see.
COO.
Gotcha. And the problem that he was looking to solve was around better reaching customers with more personalized messaging.
It was launching a new product. They had built one, and their early positioning and market story just wasn't resonating with their customers. But once we were able to change it and adapt it into how we were talking to their customers, we were able to kind of talk to them on their own terms and meet them where they are. And it changed the way that the customers were receiving the information. So the product didn't change. It was just how they talked about it and how they delivered the messaging
Got it.
with
And so
marketing.
tell me a little bit about how you went about doing that and how you used AI to better communicate positioning and better resonate within that.
Yeah, so it's interesting when we go through this. The pattern is always, they have the deep domain expertise in their subject matter, but we can see kind of horizontally across the org how it can impact and how it needs to play with the data and the people that are involved. I'm going to pause and ask you to ask that question again.
Yeah, I guess the question was they're launching a new product and ultimately what you delivered to them was better positioning. You were able to better communicate with the market as to the benefits of this product. Tell me,
Right.
tell me
Okay.
kind of where you started and then how you used AI to affect that change.
Sure. So the way we started was with the executive workshop, and that's where we get everyone together to align on what's the reality of the marketplace. Oftentimes, executives have a kind of misaligned expectations of what AI can or cannot do. And so we have to level set on what does that mean because AI as an umbrella term means different things to different people. And so we got to understand what is it we're talking about, what can it actually do, and what is the real business problem that we're trying to attack because it may not be an AI problem to solve. It could be something completely different. In this case, it was able to be enhanced and augmented and deliver better results because of what we were able to do. They had a smaller team, and it wasn't they needed more strategic support that we were able to provide by introducing some of the AI tools. We introduced some more advanced frameworks, and we just would put it through the typical tools. This was the tools changed so much, but the typical suite is going to be the major models: GPT, Llama, Claude, Anthropic, Gemini for heavy lifting. So those are the major ones for the text work. There was some image work, some video work, but for the major strategic work, it was ChatGPT and a lot of Claude for partnering.
Great. And for people who are perhaps facing a similar challenge, you start with this executive workshop. You help the C-suite and your stakeholders all better understand the opportunity set in front of them, how AI could be a solution to a problem, I guess a crystallization of the problem, and whether AI in this case would be a good solution. And then where do you go from there? What's the next step that you take with your customer on this journey?
Sure. So one of the benefits of that AI, that facilitated conversation we do, is that they will often say, we've been trying to have these meetings to talk about AI, but we just haven't really been able to move forward. There's a lot of paralysis and inertia that happens in companies because people are coming in with different needs and expectations, and so they can't really align. And so having an outside in perspective can help get them together and move them forward. From there, part of that exercise is identifying the use cases. There's a few, ways you can go, but we want to, break it up and find, there's a lot of ideas that are generated in this. Some of that can be AI supported to help further those ideas, but it's a collaboration, facilitated collaboration where they are the experts in their business. We're able to bring in, the voice of the customer about what their needs are, and we're able to align those. And so we identify the use cases. We want to make sure what's the highest impact and what's going to be the lowest risk for them, what's manageable and doable based on the talent they have on their staff and the data that they have to work with. Those are the two things I always go back to: is what data and what people. And so managing for those sets the stage for a successful pilot.
Got it. And so then you, I guess, stack rank those use cases and you find the ones that are highest probability based on those two considerations. And then how do you move forward? Like, what are the next steps once you've identified a logical use case for AI?
Yeah, so it's just getting the right team together, a cross-functional team, the change champions, or the people that are the most willing. There's naturally going to be a few people in most companies that are really excited about it. Most are kind of in the middle, and there's some that are, a little reluctant, we'll say. And so find the ones that are excited and use them as the examples to highlight and show what's going to be able to work. But we want to move quickly. We have to move quickly through these pilots. And so we do 2-week sprints. We want to quickly validate and iterate. It's a learning process where you're experimenting and you want to test ideas, and failure is okay. That's something that is a mindset shift you have to teach. It's great when I work with product teams because they already have an iterative agile mentality of, test and learn and talk to customers and hear research and use data-driven decisions. But with other parts of the business, typically they may not be used to that rapid iteration. And so any point of failure with this is a new technology. It's not going to give you the same answer every time, right? It's not like every other technology where it always gives you the right answer. This one's going to be, require a little bit more finesse and fine tuning. And so helping them understand that we are pilot testing this, we just want to get to learnings as fast as possible. And then we always do reflections and, understanding what worked, what didn't, what can we continue, what do we stop? And then, we have several pilots going ultimately after those early ones. Then we have a series of them. And then that's what takes us into the scaling phase. There's the culture work underneath that we're highlighting the success stories. Other people are starting to see how those are working. The buy-in starts to go. You have to get those early wins because you have to continue the investment, continue the momentum. You're building momentum at this phase. And so getting people excited, highlighting it internally, starting to show it externally, or with investors or stakeholders is really, really important at this phase. But to move it to the scaling phase, that's where you're just moving it up and you're starting to adopt some of the key processes along the way. And those things may not have been measured or defined before. In fact, often it's, there's a lot of organizational knowledge transfer that hasn't been documented or processes that haven't been really identified that you have to go through and do a little archaeological work to find out where is this stuff and how are we going to get through it and start to document and define how, what those key processes are for better results.
Yeah. You mentioned data as one of the inputs. One of the high-level benefits of a generative AI approach is that you need to do less cleaning of the data to prepare it for ingestion. Tell me a little bit about sort of, in this case, the types of data that you were using to help them, one, I guess, pick the best use case, and then also to run that sprint in which you were experimenting with this technology to see whether it was going to generate the solution that you hoped it would.
Yeah, so that's what generative AI is great for, is unstructured data. So you can look at it from a lot of different ways. We introduced some different frameworks that would get results that they hadn't seen clearly before. When it gets into the business and the data analysis, typically we will work with their internal team to take a look and get into the heavy lifting. Human Pilots AI in my company, we are focused more on the transformation and change management with the people. We want to empower and partner with the folks internally. They have to, eat their vegetables and do the work that they need to do so they can become stronger as a result of this process. We want to identify where there are gaps, and 98% of customers do not have the data quality they need. Whenever you see use cases or case studies in the news or online, often the ones that are really successful already have a pretty strong data foundation where they already have some customer service set up or something in place. And so if they're starting with, we need to get a data scientist and do some work, that they might have a little bit longer road. So you have to work with what you got. So it's customer information, it's market information, publicly available. It's anything that they've been collecting along the way. It's finding opportunities in the marketplace that are unmet and then cross-referencing them with what their benefits can offer, and then just connecting that to the communication.
Yeah. You mentioned also some of the tools that you used in helping this payments company solve that problem around, reaching customers with a new product. Tell me a little bit more about like what you used and, how you used them. Curious about what that 2-week sprint looked like in terms of kind of inputs and the tools and then outputs.
Yeah, so we always try to keep it pretty simple to start with. There is a back-end admin process where they have to define, are they ready for an enterprise version of OpenAI? Are they going to go with Microsoft's Copilot 365? They need to make some decisions internally. So they're also going to be testing tools while we're doing this. So we want to start fast. And so we'll use typically GPT or Gemini and will anonymize the data to a certain degree. The tools aren't as important as how you use them. And so understanding that we are protecting the company, that we're going to keep pushing the prompts further than, a single shot, and we're going to start cross-referencing and triangulating those results so we can get more accurate details is going to be important. So it's a little bit more on the behavior, the training, and the mindset shift of, this is a strategic partner. AI is invited into our meetings. They are a coworker with us. It's that mentality shift that leads to the best results. So the tools themselves, we did experiment with a bit, but we don't want to introduce too much too soon. And so you have to kind of work with what they got. If they're already used to Microsoft tools, you might want to start there, at least in something adjacent, because it's just too much of a shift.
Got it. And then you mentioned early on some of the returns from this example that we're discussing. You share a little bit more about, I guess, not only the kind of financial or quantitative return, but any other learnings that the organization has arrived at that can serve as a platform for future innovation or experimentation?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that is problematic across most companies right now is employee engagement. And so leaders understand that, they're not getting as much out of their people. Their people may not be as happy as they want, and that causes concern. And so, rather than go down the idea of we're going to replace them all with the robots, we realize, full autonomy is not realistic. I want to push, there are a lot of repetitive tasks that humans do that can be automated. And so my typical formula is, let's see if we can, get automation up to about 80% and then have that final 20% be the human touch and do the fine tuning in the edge cases. And that's where the human talent comes in. So what we found with the employee engagement is that by training them, by having those open conversations and being transparent that we're all learning this together, it resulted in a much better experience for the employees. And they were able to talk, bring, it was a cross-functional team as we created these AI pods that were working together that hadn't worked together before. And so now they're speaking the same language. The engineers and the data scientists are learning more about, the customer and the softer side of, marketing and a customer experience, while the CX marketing folks are learning more about how much heavy lifting needs to go on the back end with the data. So there was much higher engagement, much higher satisfaction with their jobs, and much happier leadership approval.
Great. I want to step back now and highlight a little bit more about your approach. Human is in the name of your organization. Tell me a little bit more about what that means for you and how you use that framing to help organizations better understand, how and where and why they should use AI.
Yeah, so there's a lot of concerns around where things are going to go with AI, right? It's been around for a while. It's been under several waves of public awareness. With generative AI, there is a deep sense of unease that has to be addressed. And that's not a technical problem or necessarily a business problem. It's a deep human problem. And so, what does it mean? How do we feel? Why is it that we feel this way? Just getting that out of the way, we can move forward. I found from my own background with a lot of customer experience and human-centered design that this is the way that we can cut past technical and business problems is by focusing on the people needs, whether that's the customer, the employees that serve them, by understanding their needs and designing the product or the service or the approach to fit with where they need to go. You can save a significant amount of money. You can get there a lot faster. And ultimately, that's what matters to the business is faster and cheaper. And so if you can focus on the human component, you can work with the technology to get better results faster.
Yeah. And a human-focused approach should be relevant to everybody. But are there particular types of organizations that you tend to focus on or that would be a good fit for your approach?
Yeah, mid-market, retail payments is great. I've noticed recently there's a lot of interest from HR groups that they started to rethink how they need to structure their team. So we work with the functional leadership, practice leadership to help them navigate their strategy for an augmented workforce where humans are working with AI agents or they're enabled by different technologies. And how do you parse out, what goes where? How do you measure results and reward them accordingly? So incentive plans change. And there's a lot of discussion to be had, and strategies to work through.
Yeah. And for organizations that are exploring AI for the first time, or like the payments company, are looking to use it to solve a specific problem, what's your number one piece of advice for them?
It's just get started. Whether everybody's already played with some version of AI at this point, but just get started on having a conversation with people, with your peers, with your reports, with your customers. A little bit of transparency goes a long way. No one has all the answers, so the idea of posturing that you do is not going to work in this environment. Being as open responsibly is going to be the best approach. The ability to learn faster is also a competitive advantage. So the faster you can learn from any quick learnings, the better off you'll be. So constant experimentation and constant learning, just that virtuous cycle that keeps learning and growing. That's going to be the way to results.
Yeah. And related to speed, what's a quick win that a business looking to adopt AI can achieve, today or tomorrow if they want to get started?
A lot of time is wasted in meetings. So anything you can do to make those more efficient, whether it's with a simple transcription or analysis or follow-up notes, that's a pretty easy win. There's also a lot of internal knowledge buried on an intranet websites or just on people's laptops. Any sort of internal knowledge share is kind of a next step. So you can centralize that and onboard their new employees or to share with other folks around the company. And that also serves as you bring on new AI technology, that you're onboarding and training that technology or those tools with that knowledge set that you've created.
Yeah. Yeah. And AI tool wise, what's your favorite tool these days?
Well, I keep experimenting with a lot of the new agent tools, and there's a lot of potential for those. My favorite go-to is just the latest Claude. I typically go back to that for visualization and strategic partnering.
And what do you like about that relative to, let's say, ChatGPT or some of the other chat-based models?
Yeah, it comes down to the experience, the user experience of it. So, what's the tone? Do I trust it? Those are two very important things. We see recent models coming out from internationally. Do we trust those? Do they have a good experience? That is the differentiator of what people are going to use. There's always going to be a shiny object. There's always going to be a new model, but the ones that focus on the experience and the interaction of how they're talking or partnering with the people that are using them are the ones that are really going to win as I see it. So, the big ones, ChatGPT and Gemini, are so powerful. They have so much behind them, but their interaction has a lot of room to be improved.
Awesome. Sean, I really appreciate the time today. Love the examples and insights you shared, and I love using the human-centered approach like here and anywhere. So yeah, thank you for coming on to Just Curious and sharing your thoughts.
Thanks, Stuart. Glad to be here.